So here we are in this mecca of sort of consumerism, right? What's the urgency for us to be talking about this topic today?
Well, all of us are constantly bombarded by images of consumption, images that invite us to use our resources in ways that portend purpose and fulfillment. And frankly, we just need to find ways of becoming free from that so that we can be living intentionally and making choices about how we use our resources.
Right. So what would you want to know from me? What is it about, you know, this connection?
Well, you write about money and value and culture. Just tell us what you're seeing these days in terms of trends in money and culture.
Right. Well, as I'm around the country, one saying I always really put forth in pretty much every presentation I do is that I believe today our society is working overtime to addict us to spending. And the social impact of that, the economic impact of that, but more importantly, the spiritual impact of that is enormous. And I think we're really starting to understand a little bit of the totality of that. I mean, for example, today in America, 5,000 advertising impressions each day come at kids and adults for no other reason to shape our spending habits and to tell us that our life is really all about spending and consuming and the things we have.
You know, you have to wear a certain brand of something, or
yes,
you're just
you have to wear designer flip-flops.
or just, you know, you're really pressured to go and get a certain type of clothing or a certain brand or from a certain store.
It's not just the consumer culture itself, which is affecting them, bombarding them with so many images and you need the new iPhone or all this stuff. But it's also they're growing up in households where parents are also bombarded by this culture. So they are only acting out of what they know.
I see the consumer culture as a gotta have culture, and I see it at all ages, really. Sometimes it's more desperate than others, but I think it takes a real mindset to step back and figure out what the real values are and what really matters.
One of the problems we have culturally is what I call affluence creep, where we as a people are expecting to have more and more as just part of the standard of living.
So it really becomes a question of what's driving us. Are we free to make choices? Are we choosing freely to use what we have in ways that's consistent with who we are, what we believe in, what we value, or are we being driven by somebody else?
Well, most definitely, and that's the real important question. And as in the past, I've been, and even today, I've been critical of the church, and I include me as part of the church. We as the church, we have been sitting for too long on the sidelines of this issue, and too much silence, really paralleling family silence. And the challenge with that is people need a voice, people need an advocate. And the churches are in a wonderful position to convene conversations about money, but they've been too long, too silent.
Yeah, and in that sense, I guess you would say that the church is reflecting the culture around us. That we live in effect in a conspiracy of silence, being unable or unwilling to really to name the issue of money and figure out effective ways of addressing it.
Most definitely, and so what we're finding on the positive side is that when we can start to initiate those conversations, convene those conversations of all generations, what happens is people start telling their stories about money. The grandparents tell their stories, the parents tell their stories, and it's not about perfection, but it's just about, you know, where are my values? You know, the choices I'm making with my money reflect my values, but what does that mean for me, for our family, for our community, for our church, right?
Yeah. How much of this is generational? I mean, I think about my grandmother living through world wars, living through a Great Depression, and I know she had a very frugal approach to life and a very different approach to money than, say, for example, my own children who live in this media consumer culture that we have today.
Well, it's the stats are what's so telling. I mean, young people today graduating from college with 4 credit cards, $3,000 of credit card debt. I mean, my grandparents, you know, hear those kind of things and they're just stunned. They're like, are you kidding me? I mean, first of all, they didn't have credit, but I mean, the fact that they would be so laissez-faire about money, $9,000 of credit card per household in America. We've had year after year after year of negative savings rate. That means we're spending more than we're earning. So we're making some choices. I don't like where the trends are going, and this is going to have a deep impact on our, again, and it is having a deep impact on families, on our communities and our culture and our world as a whole.
Building on the relationship between generosity and spiritual life, St. Mary Magdalene's in Boulder is embracing a unique way of celebrating the Eucharist. This rock-inspired rite is called Eucharist.
A Eucharist is a hybrid service. It's a combination of the music of the band U2 and then a celebration of Eucharist, which is a Greek word that means thanksgiving, that is now a word that describes the meal that we share, bread and wine, with each other. And the words reflect a lot of the values of the gospel, and so it's appropriate to use that music and those words when we're celebrating God's presence in our lives.
Much more than just a novel way to worship, this gathering of the church community is specifically addressing our need for conversation on money and generosity.
We're going to tell you a little bit about the 3 places that all your money is going to go tonight. So, hopefully all of it, right? All right, so anyway.
In this community of faith, we're trying more and more to focus on outreach and generosity. The service is built around celebrating the Millennium Development Goals, which have to do with some specific things for people in third world countries. So it's all about generosity.
They help feed the poor, they help school the poor, and get job training for those who need jobs, and building houses for those who can't afford a house, living homeless. And
I think as we study the scriptures and the life of Jesus and seeing the life that he led being a gift to us, and how do we empty ourselves to give in response to that gift. But it first begins with that concept of gratefulness, that everything we have been given is a gift. And then I think out of that flowers a sense of stewardship and generosity.
So what do we do, or what do we do to raise awareness about the bombardment of images, the consumer culture that literally surrounds us?
Right. So I think one of the great things we can do is, again, just stop the silence and to engage in those conversations. And it was interesting, I know we had a conversation just a few months ago with some people in the diocese, and the question came up, should the church really be talking about money? Is that appropriate for the church to talk about money? And so what do you think about that?
Well, I always back up with folks and sort of ask the question, what really is our life about? And always want to begin by talking about the very fact that our life is a gift. Everything we have is a gift. And that has to be named and embraced across the board.
Right.
Everything we have is pure gift.
Right.
Every moment, every breath is something that is given to us. So the only choice really before any of us at any point in our life is how will we choose to use what we have in the service of the love that is at the heart of our faith.
Right. So how does that then that go back to this notion of money values culture?
Well, I mean, clearly money is absolutely a part of our life. And in fact, money is, I would argue, is the most powerful psychic symbol around us. Right. It's not neutral. It's not something that is just an objective commodity. Money represents power and position in our world. Money represents in our psyches the esteem and affection and the regard with which we're held. Money represents security to us. And so it's little surprise that we are so fascinated and enthralled by money and possessions, because those are all attachments that that drive us.
Yes, yes. So if you had a word of kind of encouragement, or as for folks in the diocese who are thinking about this topic and how they can take that first step, to convene those conversations, what would you say to them?
Well, a couple thoughts. I mean, one is to be faithful, we need to choose to use what we have.
Right.
But we can't be faithful until we are financially free.
Right. And financial freedom means a lot of different things for different people, right? Because I think about, you know, the different ends of the socioeconomic spectrum, you know, and sort of what that means for people. But what I have seen is that as people achieve that level of freedom that you're talking about, regardless of how much they have or own or do, their life takes on a whole different purpose. I mean, it's just they are viewing the world through a very different lens, if you will, right?
Yeah, and it's not a matter of how much money or possessions we have. It's really a matter of whether we are choosing how to utilize whatever we have in a way that is consistent with who we are as Christians.
The idea of needs versus wants is actually really helpful when you're trying to figure out exactly what it is that you need or you want in your life and how does that affect everybody else.
Our parents, they do a lot of that separation. They say, do you want it or do you need it? So if I need a swimsuit, like I don't have any others, then they'll buy it. But if I just want a swimsuit and I have 100 others, I won't get it.
And one of the things that I believe sacrificial giving does is it always calls us to consider first the other before we buy the next new gadget that comes forward, and it all of a sudden becomes, you know, a necessary part of our life.
They've really made a solid line between want and need for us. They've said, well, are you going to die if you don't have this? Are your feet going to fall off if you don't get those shoes?
Yes.
And so it's kind of nice, actually, because it really doesn't encourage useless spending, which is nice.
Yes, it also helps because then when you're on your own and you have to manage your time and your money, then you know, okay, I need this and this and this, and then you don't go carelessly spending.
I moved out here and literally everything is within walking distance. I just put myself in a situation where my environment and everything that I needed was around me. And it's just a reality of like, I really don't need a car. Like this weekend I rented a car and that's a lot cheaper than insurance and gas and mileage and all that stuff. And it works fine. And it's also kind of a conscious decision of I'm helping the environment in some fashion. I'm helping like lessen my carbon footprint. Little decisions like that I think that have the bigger impact on making a difference in the world.